My husband of 32 years looked me in the eyes and called me a whore. His mother was standing right behind him, and I swear on everything I love, she was smiling. I need to tell you this story from the beginning, because if I don't, you won't understand how a woman who spent 3 decades building a family could watch it nearly be stolen from her by one person. One bitter, patient, calculating person who shared the same last name. My name is Helen. I'm 58 years old. I have 3 grown children and 4 grandchildren. I was a schoolteacher for 26 years before I retired early to help raise my youngest daughter's twins. I'm not flashy. I'm not loud. I drive a 10-year-old sedan, I grow tomatoes in my backyard, and I go to church on Sundays even when I don't feel like it. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand the kind of woman I am. Ordinary. Quiet. The kind of woman people forget is even in the room. And that, as it turns out, became my greatest weapon. I met my husband Richard when I was 25. He was 27, an electrician with kind eyes and a laugh that could fill a room. We fell in love fast, married within a year. And from the very first day, his mother, Dolores, made it clear I was not the woman she had chosen for her son. Dolores never screamed at me. She never threw plates or made scenes. No, she was far more dangerous than that. She was the kind of woman who could insult you with a smile, who could slide a knife between your ribs while handing you a plate of food. She'd say things like, "Oh, Helen, you're so brave for wearing that dress at your size." Or Richard's ex, Sarah, she was such a wonderful cook. But don't worry, dear, not everyone has that gift. I let it go. Year after year after year, I let it go. Because I loved Richard. Because he was a good husband and a good father. And because I told myself that she was his mother, and I had to respect that. I told myself she would soften with time. She never did. But here's the thing. For 30 years, Dolores kept her cruelty at a low simmer. Enough to sting. Never enough to cause a war. She lived 40 minutes away, so I only saw her on holidays and birthdays. I could manage that. I could smile through a few hours of passive aggression and then go home to my own kitchen and breathe. Everything changed 2 years ago when Dolores had a fall. She fractured her hip, and the doctors said she couldn't live alone anymore. Richard was her only child. So he came to me one evening, sat down at the kitchen table, and said, "Helen, I think Mom needs to move in with us." My stomach dropped. But I looked at this man I'd loved for over 3 decades, the father of my children, the grandfather of my grandchildren. And I said yes. I said yes, because that's what family does. I turned our downstairs guest room into a suite for her. I bought new bedding, installed grab bars in the bathroom, stocked the fridge with her favorite foods. I even put fresh flowers on her nightstand the day she arrived. Lilies, her favorite. She walked in, looked around, and said, "It's smaller than I expected." That was the thank you I received. For the first 3 months, it was manageable. Tense, but manageable. I cooked for her, drove her to physical therapy 3 times a week, picked up her prescriptions, washed her clothes. Richard worked long hours, so most of the caregiving fell on me. And I did it willingly. Not for her. For him. For the peace of our home. But Dolores didn't want peace. She wanted control. It started small. She began commenting on how often I left the house. "Where are you going again, Helen? You're always running off somewhere." I was going to the grocery store. I was going to my daughter's house to watch the twins. I was going to live my life. Then she started saying things to Richard. Little things dropped like seeds into soil. "Helen seems distracted lately. She's on her phone a lot, have you noticed? She was gone for 3 hours today, and I don't know where she went." I didn't know she was saying these things. Not at first. I only noticed that Richard started acting differently. He'd come home and look at me strangely. He'd ask where I'd been that day, and when I told him, he'd pause, like he was measuring my words. He started checking my phone, casually. He'd pick it up when I left the room, as if looking for the time. But I saw his eyes scanning my messages. I thought he was stressed. I thought it was work. I told myself it would pass. It did not pass. It got worse. One evening, Richard came home and didn't kiss me. He'd kissed me every evening for 32 years. It sounds like a small thing, but when a ritual that old breaks, you feel it in your bones. I asked him if something was wrong. He said, "I'm fine." But he wouldn't look at me. That night, I heard him talking to Dolores in her room. I stood outside the door. I know I shouldn't have listened, but something in my gut told me I needed to hear this. "She was gone again today," Dolores said. "Almost 4 hours. She said she was at Karen's, but I called Karen and Karen didn't pick up." "Mom, that doesn't mean—" "Richard, I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm your mother. I see things. I notice things. I'm in this house all day while she comes and goes. Something isn't right." My knees almost buckled. This woman, whom I had bathed when she couldn't stand in the shower alone, whom I had spoon-fed soup when her hands trembled too badly to hold a bowl, she was sitting in the room I had prepared for her, telling my husband I was unfaithful. I wanted to burst through that door. I wanted to scream, but something held me back. A voice in my head, quiet and steady, said, "Wait. Watch. Don't show your hand." So I walked back to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water. And I said nothing. Over the next 2 months, Dolores escalated her campaign. And she was meticulous. I'll give her that. She wasn't just whispering anymore. She was building a case. One day, I found a man's watch on my bathroom counter. Not Richard's. I'd never seen it before. It was silver, heavy, expensive looking. My blood went cold. I picked it up and walked downstairs. Dolores was sitting in the living room, watching television. "Dolores, do you know where this came from?" I asked, holding it up. She looked at it, then looked at me. And she said, "No, dear. I assumed it belonged to a friend of yours." The way she said friend, the tilt of her head, the ghost of a smirk. I put the watch in a drawer and said nothing. But my hands were shaking. 2 weeks later, Richard found a receipt in my coat pocket. A receipt from a restaurant downtown, a nice one. Dated for a Tuesday afternoon when I had been, according to Dolores, out for hours. The problem was that I had never been to that restaurant. I had never seen that receipt. Richard held it up at dinner. "What's this?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I've never been there." "It was in your coat, Helen. I don't know how it got there." He stared at me for a long time. And I saw something I had never seen in his eyes before. Doubt. Real, painful, gut-level doubt. Dolores sat at the end of the table, eating her soup in silence. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Then came the photographs. One Sunday morning, Richard came into the kitchen holding his phone. His face was white. He turned the screen toward me, and I saw a photo of a woman sitting in a parked car with a man. The woman had dark hair like mine. She was wearing a green jacket like one I owned. The photo was taken from far away and slightly blurred, but it looked convincing enough. "Who is he?" Richard asked. "That's not me," I said. "Mom received this from her friend Dorothy. Dorothy says she saw you parked outside the shopping center on Elm Street." "Richard, that is not me. I don't even know where." "Then why does she have a photo, Helen?" His voice cracked. I looked at that photo closely. The woman's face was turned away. You couldn't actually see her features. Just the hair and the jacket. But it was enough for a man whose mother had been whispering poison in his ear for months. He slept in the guest room each night. Not with Dolores, in the upstairs guest room. But Dolores knew. I heard her door open just slightly as I walked past, alone, to our bedroom. She was listening. She was savoring it. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, and I cried for the first time in years. Not because I was sad. Because I was furious. Because I had given this family everything. My youth, my career, my energy, my love. And this woman was dismantling it piece by piece from inside my own home. But here's what Dolores didn't understand about me. I am not loud. I am not dramatic. I do not make scenes. But I am not stupid. And I am not weak. I am a woman who raised 3 children, managed a classroom of 30 kids for 26 years, balanced a household budget down to the penny, and survived a cancer scare at 44 without telling anyone until it was over, because I didn't want to worry my family. I am patient. And patience, as Dolores was about to learn, is the most dangerous quality a person can have. The next morning, I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I made breakfast. I drove Dolores to her physical therapy appointment. I smiled. And I began to watch. The first thing I did was check the coat where the restaurant receipt had been found. It was my winter coat, the one I kept in the hall closet. Anyone in the house could access it. I checked the receipt again. It was for 2 glasses of wine and a pasta dish, dated for a Tuesday at 1:15 p.m. I looked at my calendar. That Tuesday, I had been at my daughter's house watching the twins. My daughter could confirm it. I took a photo of the receipt and kept it. Then I looked at the man's watch. I examined it more carefully. On the back, there was a tiny engraving, a set of initials. GM. I didn't know anyone with those initials. But Dolores might. I opened my laptop and started searching. I went through Dolores's Facebook page, which she barely used, but her friend Dorothy's page was wide open. I scrolled through Dorothy's friends list. And there he was. Gerald Mitchell, GM. He was a man in his 60s, someone from Dorothy's church group. My heart started pounding. I checked Gerald Mitchell's profile. And there, in his photos, I found a picture of him at a church fundraiser, wearing a silver watch. The same watch that had been planted on my bathroom counter. I screenshot everything. Next, I looked into the photograph. The one that supposedly showed me in a car with a man. I pulled up the metadata from the image file, something I learned from my son-in-law, who works in IT. The photo had been taken on a Thursday. The incident Dolores and Dorothy claimed to have witnessed happened on a Saturday. The dates didn't match. The photo was taken 2 days before the supposed sighting. It was staged. My blood was ice. My mind was fire. I didn't tell Richard. Not yet. He wouldn't believe me. Not with his mother's voice still echoing in his ears. I needed more. I needed everything. I started paying close attention to Dolores's routine. She used a tablet, a small one I'd bought her, so she could video call her friends. She thought I didn't know her passcode, but I'd seen her type it in dozens of times. It was Richard's birthday. Of course it was. One afternoon, while she napped, I opened her tablet, and I found everything. There were text messages between Dolores and Dorothy. Dozens of them. Stretching back months. Did you get the watch from Gerald? Dolores had written. Yes. He didn't ask questions. I told him it was for a church raffle. Good. I'll put it in her bathroom tomorrow. My stomach turned. I kept scrolling. The receipt worked perfectly, Dolores wrote. Richard found it. He looked like someone had punched him. Dorothy replied. Good. She deserves it. She's kept him from you long enough. There was more. Plans for the photograph. Dorothy had recruited Gerald to sit in a parked car while she took the photo from across the lot. A different woman, someone neither of them knew well, had been asked to wear a green jacket and sit in the passenger seat. They chose a spot far enough away that the image would be blurry. Just convincing enough to plant suspicion. It was all there. Every lie. Every planted piece of evidence. Every whispered accusation. Planned, coordinated, and executed like a military operation by an 82-year-old woman who had never accepted that her son loved someone other than her. I took screenshots of everything. I emailed them to myself. I emailed them to a second account. I printed hard copies at the public library and locked them in my car. Then I called a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer. An elder law attorney. I wanted to understand my rights. I wanted to understand what would happen if Richard tried to divorce me based on fabricated evidence. I wanted to know what I was entitled to and what I could protect. The attorney told me that with proof of fabrication, any divorce proceeding would collapse. He also told me something I hadn't considered. What Dolores had done, conspiring to destroy a marriage through deliberate fraud, could be grounds for a civil suit. I wasn't interested in suing an 82-year-old woman. But I filed that information away, just in case. Then I waited. I waited for the right moment. It came 3 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon. Our youngest daughter, Emma, was hosting a birthday party for her twin boys. The whole family would be there. All 3 of our children. Their spouses. The grandchildren. Richard's 2 cousins. And Dolores, of course. She wouldn't miss an audience. The morning of the party, Richard barely spoke to me. He'd been sleeping in the guest room for 3 weeks. He'd mentioned the word separation twice. Each time, I saw Dolores watching from the hallway with a look that can only be described as satisfaction. I got dressed. I put on my nicest blouse. I fixed my hair. I packed the gift for the twins and placed a plain manila envelope in my purse. At the party, everything was normal at first. The children played in the yard. Emma brought out the cake. Everyone sang. Richard stood on the opposite side of the room from me. Our children noticed. Our daughter-in-law, Meg, pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay. I told her it would be soon. After the cake, when the adults were gathered in the living room and the children were outside with the older cousins, I stood up. I need to say something, I said. The room went quiet. Richard looked up. Dolores froze, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. For the past several months, I said, keeping my voice steady, my husband has been told that I am having an affair. Evidence was presented to him. A watch was found in our bathroom. A restaurant receipt appeared in my coat. A photograph was delivered showing what appeared to be me sitting in a car with another man. I could feel every eye in the room locking onto me. Richard shifted uncomfortably. Dolores set her cup down very slowly. I have never been unfaithful to my husband, I said. Not once in 32 years. Not in thought, not in word, and not in action. Helen, Richard started. Let me finish. He closed his mouth. I opened the manila envelope. The watch that was found in my bathroom belongs to a man named Gerald Mitchell. He is a member of Dorothy Hale's church group. He lent the watch to Dorothy, who gave it to Dolores. Dolores placed it on my bathroom counter. I held up the printed screenshot of the text messages. Here is the conversation where they planned it. The room was so silent, I could hear the children laughing outside. The restaurant receipt was purchased by Dorothy at a downtown restaurant on a Tuesday afternoon. She then gave it to Dolores, who slipped it into my coat pocket. I was at Emma's house that day watching the twins. Emma can confirm this. I held up the second set of messages. Here is the conversation where they discussed it. Emma's hand went to her mouth. The photograph was staged. A woman neither Dorothy nor Dolores knew well was asked to wear a green jacket and sit in a car with Gerald. The photo was taken 2 days before the date they claimed it happened. The metadata on the image file proves it. I placed every printed page on the coffee table, one by one, like dealing cards. Every piece of evidence that was used to convince my husband I was unfaithful was manufactured by his mother, in my own home, while I cooked her meals, drove her to her appointments, and washed her clothes. I looked at Dolores. She didn't move. Her face had gone the color of old paper. Her lips were pressed together so tightly they'd disappeared. Dolores, I said quietly, I need you to hear this. I have treated you with nothing but respect for 32 years. I opened my home to you. I bathed you when you couldn't stand. I held your hand after your surgery when Richard was at work and you were afraid. And this is what you did to me. The silence was suffocating. Then our oldest son, David, spoke. Is this true? He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his grandmother. Dolores said nothing. Mom, David said again. Grandma, is this true? Dorothy's name was all over those messages. The evidence was undeniable. And Dolores knew it. She was never good enough for him, Dolores whispered. And that was her confession. Richard made a sound I had never heard a grown man make. It came from somewhere deep in his chest. Not quite a sob, not quite a groan. Something broken and animal and raw. He looked at the printed messages. He read them. His hands were trembling. Then he looked at me. Helen, he said. Just my name. But the way he said it carried the weight of every cold shoulder, every suspicious glance, every night he'd spent in the guest room, every time he'd looked at me like I was a stranger. I believed her, he said. I believed my own mother over you. Yes, I said. You did. Our daughter Emma was crying. Meg had her arm around her. David was standing near the window, his jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. Our youngest son, Brian, was staring at Dolores with an expression I can only describe as disgusted bewilderment. I want her out of our house, I said. Not yelling. Not shouting. I said it the way you'd say the sky is blue. Richard nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't defend her. He just nodded. What happened after that unfolded quickly. Dolores moved into an assisted living facility the following week. Richard paid for it. He visits her once a month. I do not go with him. He has never asked me to, and I would not agree if he did. Dorothy called the house once, trying to explain. I answered. I told her that I had copies of every message saved with my attorney, and that if she contacted me or my family again, I would pursue legal action. She hung up and I never heard from her again. Richard and I went to counseling. It was hard. There were sessions where he cried more than I did. There were sessions where I said things I'd held inside for 30 years, not just about his mother, but about the fact that he had chosen to believe her so easily, that the seed she planted only grew because somewhere, deep down, he allowed them to. That hurt more than the accusation itself. We're still together. I won't lie and say it's perfect. Trust, once shattered, doesn't rebuild overnight. It rebuilds in tiny, fragile increments. A phone call, a kiss on the forehead, a night where he holds my hand under the covers and whispers, "I'm sorry, Helen." And I believe him. But I also remember. Our children united in a way I hadn't expected. They were angry, not just at their grandmother, but at the idea that something so vicious could happen inside a family. David changed the locks on our house the day Dolores moved out. Emma dropped off the twins more often, like she wanted to fill the house with light and noise and life. Brian called me every single evening for 3 months straight. He never said much. He'd just ask, "How are you, Mom?" and let me talk. Dolores has never apologized. I don't expect her to. Some people carry their bitterness to the grave because it's the only thing that makes them feel alive. I feel sorry for her in a way. She spent 32 years trying to destroy something beautiful, and in the end, the only thing she destroyed was her own place in this family.